Okay. We can do this now.
Here we go. It's the Bible reloaded, logic explosion, like Jesus and Moses, but it's Hugo and Jake. The Bible is jaded, and most of it taken, so get educated with Hugo and Jake. Pull up you and stop what you're doing, it's Bible reloaded time. They call it debated, the theists will hate it, I'm talking to taken, but it's Hugo and Jake. So on with the show then, it's not candy coated, it's the Bible reloaded, with Hugo and Jake, with Hugo.
Hello everyone, I'm Hugo,
And I'm Jake.
and this is the Bible Reloaded, and we are back to enter the strange world of the Kiwi known only as Ray Comfort, aka the Banana Man.
Oh, Ray. Oh, Ray. If you want to look back, he called us out a little bit. He's talking some shit on Facebook. There's a link to that video right here. Well, this is the day, Ray. This is the day it happens. This is your fucking movie, and I gotta be honest with you, didn't want to do it.
Yeah, we have a strange relationship with Ray in that we did 2 of his movies. The first one got DMCA'd even though we used no footage of the movie whatsoever. That got rescinded though. He apologized. He actually sent me a nice fruit basket, not a joke. There it is. And he left a little note on there that essentially said, hey guys, review whatever you want, it's fine. So that's what we're doing today, and yeah, we're gonna use some footage, and we're gonna use some still images, because guess what? Fair use is a thing, and we're allowed to do that. And before Ray or anyone around him decides, hey, that's not cool, bear in mind we're already in the middle of a lawsuit with someone over this, because they falsely took down our video. So please don't do that, Ray. We just want to have a little discussion with you. A heart-to-heart, a tete-a-tete, as they say in,
Maybe some homoeroticism.
yeah, definitely some of that, especially with that mustache. Are you kidding me?
Oh,
Anyway.
man.
Without further ado, here's the Atheist Delusion. I would call the film, but that's being a little generous, so let's just say this video begins with a montage of clips of dumb college students who are about to see scammed by Ray generic sciencey graphics, evidence that Ray Comfort is so cheap he can't even afford a cameraman, and oh look, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. Wait, what's that say down there? Fair use 17 US code subsection 107. Oh good, we did teach Ray something in the last video.
You don't have to go to church on Christmas, and it is about being good, and that's what all religions are about anyway.
Yeah, fuck you, Raven Simone. Can't tell my future.
After the opening credits, we get a brief montage of beautiful stock footage. Ray is, of course, setting up his go-to arguments from design, arguments from complexity, and arguments from beauty, but honestly, it just makes me wish I was watching Planet Earth. I love you, Ray, but that Kiwi accent is nails on a chalkboard next to the OG David Attenborough.
Respect. So, for the introduction of almost every Ray Comfort film, this is the basic setup. It's a series of quick cuts between people to establish their beliefs. More often than not, most of them are atheists, and they say as much.
Are you an atheist?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, sir.
This does 2 things. And most obviously, it establishes his target audience, which is us, the atheists, the non-believers. Less obviously, though, it establishes the editing style. This is important because he's going to use this brief quote and quick cut system in order to craft the narrative to fit his message. If Ray has 2 skills, one is growing an excellent mustache, and the second is editing gish gallops like a fucking boss. Ray, if you're watching this, that's not a good thing. That's a dishonest approach to the conversations you're having. It's a good mustache, though. Good mustache.
Also, if you look at the panel of people, you'll notice it's like 75-80% college students. Young college students. Ray sure does love college freshmen, and do you know why? College freshmen are idiots. Now, that's okay, it's not their fault. That's why they're in college, to try and learn and be more introspective about their own beliefs, but Ray doesn't present this to be the case. In all of his recent movies, he uses these people's inability to take on his relentless gish gallop of bad ideas and presents it as evidence that his arguments are irrefutable. I always wonder, though, his movies take a while to make. How many college freshmen and other random people without the ability to articulate arguments did you have to go through before you found enough to fill an hour? Even then, it's heavily edited. This doesn't make you look competent, Ray. It makes it look like you had to play life on easy mode with the highest possible handicap to even squeak by as coherent. Anyway, this introduction culminates with Ray asking the panel of people if they are open to evidence of God. They of course respond yes, as do I actually, so go for it, Ray. You have us captive for a whole hour. Bring it.
So now, here's the first salvo, so buckle in, because this is why a ton of Christians find this guy to be effective. He's going to start by making a very complex answer to his question seem like it should be far simpler, stripping it of its nuance. He's going to use this editing technique to make the people's answers sound less satisfying than they actually would be had they been given the length of discussion that these questions necessitate. Fucked up, Ray. Fucked up.
Ray's first argument has the panel member shown a book on creationism filled with color illustrations of nature. He asks if the book created itself, if its pages and ink fell from the sky and formed on its own. This is apparently Ray's new take on the teleological argument, or the argument from design. The basic premise is as such. A man is strolling down the beach and sees a pocket watch. Does the man infer the watch evolved on its own on the beach, or instead assume the more reasonable conclusion that it was made by a watchmaker? Ray, as a creationist, contends that because you can see a watch as complex and therefore the product of design, you should also see other complex things like trees and fish and people as designed due to their own complexity. This is one of my least favorite creationist arguments due to its own self-defeating nature. If you're walking down the beach and notice a stray watch and determine it is man-made due to its complexity, then decide because of that, nature itself must be designed due to its own much more complex nature than that of the watch. But if that's the case, why did you notice the watch for its uniquely designed nature in the first place? I think Matt Dillahunty said it best. If the watchmaker argument were true, every grain of sand on the beach must have also been designed. You would be walking on a beach full of watches, next to an ocean full of watches, and a stream and trees made of watches, and you're reaching down and picking up one watch saying, this watch is so different than the other millions and trillions of other watches that are surrounding me. Basically, you don't recognize clocks and books as designed because of their complexity. You recognize them because you know what clocks and books are.
Okay, so you can see this setup from like a mile away, and frankly, the people that he's interviewing do too.
Can you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
We're starting off with intelligent design. The parameters are set within the conversation that only intelligence can make things. Basically, the divine watchmaker argument that Hugo used. But Ray was very adamant in his Facebook post about us that this is indeed not the watchmaker argument. Sure, this isn't the watchmaker argument. The Earth also isn't 6,000 years old, and Kirk Cameron doesn't peg you with a purple dragon dildo every Monday night while you watch Dancing with the Stars. Okay, buddy.
What do you think the mentality of someone who believes a book fell together without a bookmaker?
Well, they would be crazy.
Couldn't happen, could it?
I don't think so.
It'd be impossible.
It would be like saying an explosion caused everything that makes a 747 airplane to all just come together by accident without some intelligent thought behind it.
Did Ray Comfort, like, plant this guy in his documentary? Because he just used the watchmaker argument against himself. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. We're kicking you off the team, old guy. Tap in, early 30s lady that dyes her hair too often. We got this.
DNA happened by accident.
No, I think that it developed over the course of many, many millennia of evolution and development.
Hey, not bad, Tammy. We're gonna name you Tammy for now, by the way. Don't let us down. I don't name things I don't love.
DNA exists in every living thing. Its origins don't matter. The fact that there is intelligent information tells us there must be an intelligent designer. Is this making you think?
It is, and I do think about it from time to time. It's just, yeah, it's complicated.
No, Tammy. Fuck, okay. You're dead to me. We're moving on. That took like 30 seconds. I can't fucking believe this! Okay, the argument here is that complex information such as that found in DNA necessarily means that an intelligence provided the information, but that just doesn't follow. By that logic, every time a species has had information in their DNA that led to the extinction of that species, that was due to some divine intelligence, meaning that the intelligence was fucking garbage at making dodo birds. What you got against dodo birds, Jesus? You asshole. The point is, you're simplifying a concept that's much more complex than God did it. This evolutionary process needs mutation, reproduction, recombination, gene flow, genetic drift, sex, death, energy, time, climate, and just a shit ton of other shit that are borderline limitless. It's not easy, and it's not quick. I understand how that could be maybe unappealing to someone that desires a simple answer, but in that case, I am unwilling and unable to provide a simple one. Simple answers are rarely correct ones. The idea that Occam's razor is a catch-all is to the detriment of those that need to learn stuff. All that said, here's Ray taking a shit on all the things I just said in an effort to ignore it.
The point I'm trying to make is very simple. Book designer, or bookmaker, DNA, intelligent designer. God. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Ray goes on to call DNA the book of life, and therefore, just like real physical books, it must therefore have an author. I already covered why this isn't an apt analogy. I'd just like to point out that Ray thinks metaphors are rock-solid arguments.
Ray, this doesn't make sense. If we trace your line of thought all the way back, you just arbitrarily draw a line in the sand where God starts and our arguments begin. If I say an intelligence needs to make other intelligence, you say that's true unless that intelligence is God. What is it like being that intellectually roadblocked?
You an atheist?
I am.
What would you think of the mentality of someone who thought a physical book could make itself?
I think they'd be silly. Of course it can't make itself.
What would you think of the mentality of someone who believed the instruction book for life, DNA, made itself?
I think it'd be silly as well. It would need investigation.
That's atheism.
Absolutely.
Okay, where does he find the uneducated hipster atheist? The answer to the question is like a quick Google away. Here's the answer. RNA, the complement molecule to DNA, was the first to evolve naturally from materials already common in the prebiotic Earth. Self-replicating was achieved through catalytic reactions in RNA-based molecules called ribosomes, or possibly through an intermediary molecule. Once self-replication had been achieved, the forces of natural selection took over. For example, those molecules which were produced from the elements survived longer and reproduced more. So any molecules which found themselves with a lipid bubble, which also forms naturally, would have a better chance of reproducing because they were protected. After many incremental steps, the lipid bubble eventually becomes a cell membrane, which is better than a lipid bubble, and thus protects the molecule's DNA. Natural selection happens on a cellular level as well. This concept of the best prepared organism has the best chance to reproduce is really the only concept you have to grasp before it falls into place.
DNA couldn't make itself. It's impossible. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Rory, I'm going to assume your name is Rory. No, that doesn't make sense. The process of DNA is a fully autonomous action that happens due to a myriad of factors. But most importantly, it's reproduction, something that you will obviously never take part of in a willing situation. This is like Bio 101 shit, man. Were you too busy skipping class to go hang out in the espresso shop while having an argument over what constitutes as being chill wave versus what's vape wave? Nobody knows, Rory. And frankly, I'd rather die than discuss that with you.
You're an atheist, so you believe the scientific impossibility that nothing created everything.
Ray, when we apply quantum mechanics to gravity, we get stuff. It creates stuff. It's very unstable. You talk to Lawrence Krauss in this video in just a second, and you just ignore all the shit he's talking about? It's crazy to me. So now you may say, aha, but why would it create unless someone told it to create? To which I reply, I don't know, but I'm pretty excited to find out. And that's the difference. That's the major thing. It doesn't have to be an uncomfortable situation for you to admit that you don't know. See, I'm not uncomfortable with not knowing. I'm uncomfortable with the idea of lying to myself to satisfy the desire to know by filling the gap in my knowledge with the junk food of religion. It's just not satisfying.
Like Jake said, Ray parlays the discussion into the idea that atheists believe everything came from nothing. This is of course going to depend on who you talk to, but I would consider it at the very least a bit of a mischaracterization. The only thing that atheists have in common by definition is the lack of belief in a deity. So, beyond that, where you actually think the universe came from is a different question altogether. As far as science is concerned, the furthest back we can look in time on an astrological terms is the Big Bang. Now, I'm sure if Ray were standing in front of me, he would want inevitably to ask where the Big Bang came from and who or what created it. The answer is actually very simple. We don't know. As of right now, we have no way of discovering what, if anything, happened before the Big Bang. The Big Bang is literally the beginning of space-time as we know it. Saying I don't know is literally the only honest answer one could give to that question. Ray, I would assume, would consider this a poor answer and demand I somehow come up with something, anything. But that's part of Ray's problem. He's so uncomfortable with the idea of uncertainty, he believes his false answers to complex questions are better than no answer at all, regardless of their merit. I don't know where the universe came from, if that question is even a rational one to ask when talking about the origin of time itself, but you don't find answers to hard questions with answers that just make you feel better because you're certain of them.
If there was a big bang in space that from there issued cats and dogs and horses and cows, the sun, the moon, the stars, the seasons, and all this marvel of creation came from a big explosion, what caused the explosion and where do the materials come from the explosion, and why is there such incredible order from the explosion? Every explosion I've heard of creates chaos, not order.
Fuck, Ray. I feel like we do this every single time we do one of your videos. Okay, real quick, the Big Bang, not an explosion. It was a rapid expansion of literally everything, including all matter, all mass, time and space, gravity, all of it. We know this because we can actually see it, down to the millisecond after the initial moments. Hugo just referenced it. The reason explosions cause disorder is because explosions on Earth are contained by gravity and the planet, the atmosphere, and the things around it. In a vacuum, we can see it happens pretty much totally opposite. Like there's nothing to fucking run into, so it will explode and then recollapse into different things. An explosion on Earth is destruction. An explosion in the vacuum of space is creation. It just takes time and gravity, Ray.
Of course, to bolster Ray's case, he uses the greatest mind of our age.
With whoever built me, this is too much, too weird that it happened by accident. It didn't happen by accident. I don't feel that it did.
This man said yes to the Shaggy Dog, Zoom, Wild Hogs, and the Santa Claus 3. I don't know if he's an authority on cosmology.
Al Borland would be fucking disappointed, Tim.
So next, Ray sits down with theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss and asks him if this magazine could have created itself. Krauss says this.
No, which is one of the reasons why the way that the Bible was written by humans, because it didn't make itself. There were some bunch of largely literate Iron Age peasants who were trying to understand the world and didn't know much about science, and they wrote in different forms books. And
okay, so the fourth question:
could a book arise spontaneously from nothing? Absolutely. But could it make itself? No.
Okay. For anyone who ever is asked similar questions by Ray, never give him things he can use to edit your talks down and make it look like his arguments hold weight, or that make you look petty for taking pot shots at religion. I'm sure, in this discussion, unedited, Krauss was very articulate when discussing physics and other scientific topics. But a little bit of pragmatism will go a long way. For instance, when Ray asks if the book was created or just made itself, the answer should be, I understand you're giving me a leading question in order to quote mine in editing, but the metaphor you're making between books and biological life is not one that makes practical sense. You can then go on to explain why the metaphor doesn't make sense or whatever, but don't play into his interview and editing tricks. The problem with people who talk to Ray is that they let him lead the conversation along the lines of his pre-prepared script and get taken in by leading questions without questioning his flawed premises. The funny thing is, Ray, you know people see through this, right? People can tell these interviews are heavily edited messes. The only people you're convincing are those that are actually on your side. And hey, I get it. I'm sure this whole gig makes you decent money, and that's your business. But on the off chance you are genuinely trying to reach out to atheists, you need to understand you're doing a terrible job.
DNA make itself.
Well, see, that's where the question is ridiculous, because in fact, DNA doesn't make itself any more than a snowflake makes itself. A snowflake is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's assembled by nature. It doesn't make itself. It's the laws of physics and chemistry, polar molecules, that make this incredibly complex, beautiful structure.
Holy shit, Lawrence nailed that. Wow. I mean, I gotta hand it to you, Ray. I thank you for adding this to the video, because I was about to chug the rest of this, and I'm just gonna sip it politely. Pinky out. Yeah, that's way better than being self-destructive. What?
Can I finish this anyway? Because I'm pretty self-destructive.
I mean, go for it. I just don't have time to be day drunk today. I got shit to do.
I have a lot of time.
Natural law does indeed produce complex structures like snowflakes. But the law that produces that kind of complexity is simply the same chemical reaction repeating over and over. That is not information.
But Ray, DNA is a set of chemicals and their reactions with one another that creates information. You're putting information on this pedestal like it's inerrant and perfect in some way, when literally every living thing has inefficiencies, maladies, and shortcomings, all of which were delivered by the same DNA. So if you go down this road, and I can't stop you, but if you do, then you gotta give God his due when it comes to things like mental retardation, genetic disorders and diseases, and all cancers. You literally can't have an all-loving and virtuous God and in the same breath tell me that he codes the DNA that kills thousands of children every year by diseases that can only be gotten through a genetic inheritance.
The fact that a book requires an author and a program requires a programmer is not an illusion. It is factual as seen in the real world around us. It isn't apparent design, it is real design.
Okay, right. Asserting things doesn't make it true. Here's an example. I could believe with all my heart that you and I someday will retire to a small Danish village. We'll spend our days like knitting each other hemp sweaters, spending our nights beneath a bear hide blanket and licking home churned butter off each other's nipples. But that doesn't make it true, Ray. No matter how much I fantasize it. No matter how heartbreaking it is. No matter how much butter I churn.
So where did that specified information come from? Its origin is certainly supernatural.
And then it fucks up and creates this. Yeah. God did that. Look at that fucking thing. That's gross. Why would he do that?
What Professor Krauss completely overlooks is the external nature of the information encoded into the DNA molecule.
Okay, Ray, there's no evidence at all that DNA carries information because an intelligence put it there. I'm telling you, if you keep this up, you'll be spending the weekend on the couch, and I'm going to have the bear hide blanket all to myself. We'll share the butter still.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
So, which came first? The chicken or the egg? We talked about this in our Matter of Faith review, so if you want to check that out, here's a link. But long story short, egg-laying creatures have existed long before chickens, including the ancestor of chickens, so gradually, over time, the ancestor species evolved gradually, until it became what we might today classify as a chicken. However, as evolution is a gradient and has no clear cutoff points, it would be impossible to actually draw a line between an ancestor species and its descendants. The gradual change over time, as opposed to steep, quick changes, is one of the key elements of evolution by natural selection that no matter how many times it is explained to Ray, he doesn't understand it.
You okay? You good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Egg, okay. Was the egg fertilized?
Yes! Yes, of course it was fertilized, Ray! What the fuck? This is... Every time we review one of these, It feels like fucking Groundhog Day, except Bill Murray was less suicidal than I am right now.
It would have to be.
There's a rooster.
So there was a rooster.
There's a rooster and a chicken. Where do they come from?
Okay, so we might as well officially address the chicken thing real quick. Hugo touched on it a little bit, so I guess we'll just dive right into it. And by we, I mean that this video right here, because I don't want to spend 15 minutes explaining this shit to you, and I couldn't possibly do it as well as this video does. So seriously, if you have any questions about evolution at all, if you're maybe a Ray Comfort fan or you just like new to this whole I don't maybe not believe in God thing, check out this video. And by the way, I strongly suggest pausing this video, visiting Pornhub, rubbing one out, coming back to this video, then clicking on the link to the evolution video in the description, then watch that and then finish the review. But definitely the Pornhub thing is very important. And also the evolution thing. And also come back. Are you sold?
The next topic is the famous Sagan quote, then repeated, of course, by Neil deGrasse Tyson about how you and I are made of star stuff. Ray, of course, being a young Earth creationist, takes offense at this. Basically, what Sagan was talking about is how stars are the universe's ovens for creating heavier elements. During their lifetime, a star spends most of its life converting hydrogen into helium. Then as the star dies, it begins to convert the hydrogen into even heavier elements like carbon, which happens to be the foundation of all organic chemistry. So, assuming you aren't a young Earth creationist, which is most people, then it's not too scandalous to say yes, the very material you are made out of was at one point forged by a star's nuclear reactions. It may be a poetic or romanticized way of saying it, but that makes it no less true. It's a non-argument. We already know Ray thinks the Earth and its creatures were formed in a week, so instead of rallying around this one quote, he might as well just say, "Nuh-uh, you guys, the Earth is only 6,000 years old." But it happens to be a hobby of Ray's to reword the same argument over and over and over, so here we are.
Before it had eyes, how did it see? The eyes have to evolve because the thing's evolving from stardust.
Correct. So they probably didn't see. They felt.
Did it have a brain, or couldn't have had a brain until the brain evolved? So how did it think to look for food, and where did the food come from? And why did the food evolve? And did it have lungs? Do you think the chicken thing, before it evolved into chicken, had lungs?
Gish? Gallop. Moles and some cavefish have no eyes and they survive just fine. Starfish and jellyfish have no brains. They survive just fine. Lungless salamander. Self-explanatory. And finally, our good old friends, the bacteria. No eyes, no brain, no lungs, and they've been kicking around for some billions of years. So yeah, biology is a little more complicated than a children's picture book.
Okay, small photoreceptor proteins could detect sunlight. We call these eye spots. They can only really sense ambient light, so no really details in their environment. But when the only thing an organism needs to do is feed off the energy of the sun, that can be quite the advantage over organisms that don't. If you don't understand what I'm talking about in regards to this type of selection pressure, then you didn't do the whole Pornhub then evolution video thing I just told you to do, which makes you a bad listener, which means it's not my fault. It's your fault.
So how did it think to look for food, and where did the food come from?
Ray, if things need to think in order to eat, why do plants exist?
And see before it had eyes, and think before it had a brain, and eat before it had an appetite.
Ray, an appetite is just when a thing needs energy. It doesn't necessarily mean it feels hunger the same way we do. Like, some things don't even respirate via oxygen, like many extremophiles, for example. Some things don't hear, and even some animals use sound to navigate the world rather than using the visible spectrum of light. It all depends on the environment the organism is trying to survive in, and whether or not it can do so for long enough to reproduce either sexually or asexually. If it can, it reproduces until either A, its offspring reproduce and adapt enough to become suited to the environment, or B, they go extinct. This is why if we take penguins and drop them in the rainforest, they die. There's plenty of food in the rainforest, but the penguin isn't suited for life in that environment. It's a penguin. It would suck in the rainforest. There's no trees in the Antarctic. It'd be like, hey, what are those fucking things? And then it would get eaten by a panther.
Which came first in the chicken? Was it its blood, or its heart, or its blood vessels? Which evolved first?
Another of Ray's favorite falsehoods, the idea that organs and species evolve one organ at a time. Honestly, this one is so bad I think even Ray knows how bad of an argument it is. Anyway, I'm the layest of laymen, but I'll do my best to explain the evolution of the circulatory system as best as I understand it. Bear in mind, though, unlike Ray, I'm under no impression that I'm an expert at the things I say. I haven't studied it in depth, so please anyone correct me if I'm wrong and I'll mention it next week. Basically, earlier species did have cells that were precursors to modern blood cells. They functioned somewhat alike in providing various parts of the organism with nutrition or oxygen. As time went on, a precursor to the heart developed, but of course was much simpler to what we know today as the heart. A simple mechanism to help move around the fluid to different parts of the organism. You can see something similar, though still much more complex in some fish. Their hearts still pump like that of mammals, but with only 2 chambers instead of the typical 4 shared by us. You can imagine simpler versions of this system as well, any simple biological mechanism that redistributes resources across an organism. After that was set into motion, evolution does its thing over millions of years. Mutations occurred, some of which were beneficial to a group to a point where that mutation spread across the entire population, from mating, and voila, one hot, fresh circulatory system pie straight out of evolution's oven.
That sounds sexual.
Yeah, it might be a little bit, but I'm on camera, so no.
Can you think of anyone that isn't fully evolved? Anything on Earth. Dogs have 4 legs, they have a tongue and eyes and ears. Everything's fully evolved. People they don't have half-evolved leg. You don't see someone with a semi-evolved leg or half an ear or half a nose, half an eye, half teeth.
That's fine.
Okay, so first of all...
Also, people make this mistake all the time. Nothing fully evolves, ever. Every single time a person is born, we are evolving. And I say we as a species, not we as you and I. Individual people don't evolve during their lifetime. Rather, their reproduction is the part where they contribute. So, like, when you fuck and you make a baby on accident and then you don't acknowledge it, that the thing you don't acknowledge is human evolution. I owe a lot of back child support.
See, this is part of Ray's problem. You cannot see human evolution or any macroorganism's evolution in a human lifespan. This is why we use things like microorganisms or short-lived insect species to study evolution in the lab, and use archaeology to study past organisms that current animals have evolved from. Either Ray has a fundamental misunderstanding of the topic, or he's a charlatan who does this solely to bilk young Earth creationists out of money every time he cobbles together one of these things.
And then he interviews this guy. What the fuck?
You are a moral being. You're not like a dog or a cat. You care about justice and truth. That's why you're upset about little kids getting killed and molested, because you're made in God's image. If you were a dog, you couldn't care less. But you're created in God's image with a knowledge of right and wrong.
Here we go. Morality. I think this is Ray's favorite argument because he brings it up in every single one of his videos. We've addressed it before, but since he was a little more specific this time, if being upset by child murder and rape makes humans made in God's image, what does that make the child rapist? He's also a person you claim was intelligently designed by God, so is he just an exception, or when God designed him, do you think, wouldn't it be funny if I made this dude attracted to children? Ray goes on calling Richard Dawkins an idolater who makes basically a straw man against God by cherry-picking the Old Testament to paint a picture of God as evil and unjust. Now, we've read most of the Old Testament at this point, and let me tell you, you don't have to cherry-pick very far to get a picture of the God of the Old Testament. But for the sake of argument, let's talk about the New Testament God for a second. The New Testament is where the idea of hell really started to take hold because, as we mentioned in our Bible study, the Jewish people who wrote the Old Testament believed their afterlife was called Sheol, and it was more akin to a Hades-style afterlife. The New Testament God advocates that anyone, regardless of if they are good or bad, should be subject to eternal punishment and torture for a finite crime. And what is this finite crime? Not believing he exists regardless of lack of evidence? Heck, even if for some reason you do believe, you still get eternally tortured for not submitting yourself to him. So we have an all-powerful, all-knowing despot who uses his power to create a sapient race of people with the sole purpose of worshiping him, and the rejects get literally the worst existence imaginable. Not exactly a loving God. So, I don't know about you. That's enough for me for today. I think we need to put off part 2 until next week, because I can only handle so much Ray Comfort in one day. It took 2 hours to watch half an hour of his fucking movie.
It sure did. Now, the thing is, though, Ray is going to be jacking off while he watches this and go, and right when he said it, oh, they're going to do a part 2. Oh, double the attention. So, I don't know. Good for you, Ray. You're welcome.
I think part of the reason he was goading us on to do a review.
Not part of the reason, the whole reason.
We were going to do it anyway, but he knows he's going to get extra views from this, which is kind of hilarious. So I would suggest if you have access to an ad blocker, if you're going to go check out his video.
Ouch.
Maybe use it? I don't know, but it's up to you. Anyway. I'm just saying, man.
We would never advocate using it. Officially.
No, of course I wouldn't. That's wrong. But
that's wrong. Right.
Anyway.
You can use ad blockers on our videos, though, because we're cool. We're cool YouTube hosts.
Please don't do that.
Just buy our merchandise or Patreon. Help us feed our families. We're starving. Obviously, we're starving.
If you don't give us ad money, I can't.
You think
buy
this
more.
Coke is gonna do itself?
I'm an absolute man. I'm not going back to Smirnoff. I'm not. Okay. God forbid Burnett's. Oh,
I did the Jameson. This is an ad for Jameson. Jameson, it'll turn you into this.
Thanks, everyone. You can always check us out on our other channels over at The Quran Reloaded, where we do Islam-related stuff. Or if you want to watch us do just movie reviews and stuff like that, we also do a weekly podcast-style show where we talk about all the movie, TV, and video game news of the week over at Unpopular Culture.
Doctor Strange is happening soon. I'm so excited.
Yes, so we would love for you guys to go over there and check that out. I'd like to have more subscribers over there. I enjoy doing the show, but I'd like more people to see it. Also, I know we were going to do Creation Adventure Team. That's still happening. But we forgot Ray Comfort's movie was coming out, so that's why this is happening. Don't worry.
Well, and Jack Chick died. Everything got moved back because Jack Chick died.
Jack Chick, god damn it, you're inconveniencing me even in your death. So, you can always follow us on Twitter at Bible Reloaded.
You can follow Hugo at Hugo Reloaded. You can also subscribe to the channel, and I don't say that lightly. You should subscribe to the channel, and you should also press the notification button so that the subscription means something, because YouTube just doesn't understand what subscribe means.
If you want to help support the show, you can also donate to our Patreon campaign. We have a bunch of different levels now. It's a monthly grab bag type deal. $5 gets you a signed chick tract every month. $10 gets you buttons and stickers. And I believe $15 gets you these 3D pop doll things. They're pretty neat. Right. So if you want to...
You get all of them all together. The higher you go up, you get the lower levels too. It's basically a TBR loot crate. You should do it. I don't know if Loot Crate is a registered trademark. If it is, it's Loot Crate with a K.
So, thanks everyone. Share this video, like it. I'm a YouTube whore. Until next time, I'm Hugo.
I'm whore.
And this has been,
Whore Reloaded.
This has been not enough.
We just want to fornicate and steal.
I literally only did 2 shots during this episode. I needed 7 more.
I have to pee.
Oh, me too. We should not have chugged those at the beginning. That was a poor decision.
I just peed.